We've been doing some work for grazing grain, and part of that, even though we're the Irrigated Cropping Council, was to do some dryland work, and this is the first part I'll talk about. The second is sort of some work we've sort of stumbled upon rather than planned, but that's sometimes how these things work. Right, so for the first part, it was dryland summer crops. So I suppose the assumption with climate change is that we're going to get more rainfall over summer. We did some modelling, and after a million graphs and reams of information that not many people apart from modellers can understand, I think we came up with the conclusion that they think it's going to rain a bit more with climate change, but they don't give a guarantee, so you never know what's going to happen. So sort of based on that premise, we thought, all right, if we're going to get more rain over summer, what are we going to do with it? So we looked at some of the options. I suppose originally it was the grain aspect of things, seeing as it's GRDC funded, but we also eventually sort of headed towards the forage options more than the summer options. So the first year was a project which was 10-11, and if you're from sort of northern Victoria, 10-11 was the flood year. Good spring rainfall, excellent summer rainfall, incredible summer rainfall. So if something was going to work, it was going to work that year. Right, so we had a look at a couple of the options, what we wanted to do. So go with the traditional, sort of summer crops, sorghum, millets, various sorghums, various millets, not just the forage millets. But we also went with a low-cost option. So if this is going to be a risky practice, we don't want to invest a lot of money in the paddock. What happens if we just go back and sow a bit of wheat or a bit of barley in? Will it grow? We see volunteer crops work. But will it work if we deliberately try and do it? And as I said, we've eventually headed towards forage crops rather than grain crops based on some of the observations, particularly in the first year. So rather than go through the trial stuff, it's in your notes about how things went, and the forage sorghums grew fantastic amount of dry matter in that year where we got 420 mils of rainfall, sort of November to January. Now that's, if there's decile 20, we had a decile 21 year. So it was a phenomenal year, we got phenomenal growth, but it was the exception. So really so this is just a sort of summation of what we've seen in the trials. So the first one is that really to successfully use the moisture over summer, we really need summer crops. The winter crops just did not, even though there was moisture there, they just don't like the temperature. And even if you do get 420 mil over summer, it doesn't come once a week of 20 mil. It comes in 160 mil, then 6 weeks of dry, and then another 100 mil sort of thing. So the crop really stressed out in the weeks, and the barley didn't go too well. The other thing was, particularly because we did these across northern Victoria, so we had a mallee site, a site at Kerrang just near the mallee, so we could cheat with a little bit of irrigation water if required. And over at Tungamar, sort of in the northeast. The lighter soils gave you a bit of flexibility at sowing, but on the clay soils in summer, you have to be ready to go almost before it rains. Otherwise, by the time you get back on the paddock, warmer temperatures, open the soil up just to get the seed in, dries out too rapidly. As I said before, if it rains, the stuff will grow. We grew at Coolonon, it was average about 25 tonne of forage sorghum on 60 kilos of DAP. So that's the other negative side to it. So they have the potential. And in the second year, where we tried some of these forage crops more than the grain crops, one that stood out to us was the subtropical legume lablab. It grew 5 tonnes a hectare, so we're pretty happy with that. And the second year of the trial, it was a wet summer, but nowhere near. I think we got about 190 mil of summer rainfall rather than the 420 the year before. So it was regarded still as a reasonably wet summer. And as I sort of alluded to, you don't get something for nothing. We stripped with us, 25 tonne sorghum crop, we stripped on, say, all the available land, all the available moisture, and we probably really reduced our available P was probably down to a 0. We probably got a bit leak out through the next winter phase. But we followed that trial up with just sowing the whole lot over with wheat, and we severely knocked down our wheat yields on those plots that grew, which is not surprising. Another observation is that the grain harvest isn't realistic, even though we get exceptional rain. It's not regular enough to actually get the crop through properly. One of the main things we found, even with the grain types that were going quite well, is that every rainfall event, particularly sort of post-Christmas, it tends to give a flush of growth. So when you go, potentially to strip some of these things, you've got the flush from the January rain, the flush from the February rain, and the flush from the March rain. The January rain ones are ready to go, February one's pretty close, and you've got these green things still sitting there. So it just makes harvest almost impossible. Similarly with some of the grain legumes we tried a couple of the bean types. Mung beans in particular were quite good. We had in that first year we had 0.9 of a tonne, but we've got a little plot harvester where you can basically skim along the ground. I'd hate to do it with a reel header. We'd get more dirt than beans, I think. And we also had problems with insects, mice, particularly in the first year. We had locusts, mice. Later in that wet year, mice climbed up, ate a lot of our grain. Just in terms of the beans, we got 0.9 of a tonne. It was difficult to pick up, but also they weren't the best beans in the world. Spots on there. So that led us down to the growing fodder, far more greater chance of success. And in the mallee, growing sorghum or millet over summer isn't anything new, but we were quite impressed with how some of the perennial legumes went. Tropical legumes, they're all annuals. And better quality feed. Some of the sorghums, you might as well feed them cardboard at times when they're stressed. But with the forage legumes, good quality feed, and maybe we're adding a little bit of into the soil at the same time. And as well, but the problem with some of these forage legumes is that we don't have a great deal of weed control options. So in one particular case, where we had sown some lab on a cooperative place rather than plot work, also got a brilliant crop of heliotrope, and you really can't. It was very difficult. Well, I think it's impossible to take heliotrope out of lab, especially if you go by the labels. So you had one half of the farming operation saying, "Oh, this lab's great. Look at all this feed." And the other one, "Oh, this is crap. Look at all the weed problems, and I'm really worried about putting the sheep in there." So, it's a few things to work out yet. Now, so these are some quick photos. Right, so this is Pacer grain sorghum, and you can sort of pick from the photo. We've got some heads here and heads here that are almost ready, yet we've still got some bright green ones coming up. And that was just that variability that we had due to the flushes of the rainfall events. This is an overview of the careen site, so you can see that most of the tall things, the sorghums, the various sorts. There's some different hybrids in there, so they're going quite well. The stuff in the background is an older type of sorghum, what's it called, honey sweet, which is a sort of like a standing crop type sorghum rather than a grazing sorghum. This is at Coolanong, so in the mallee. We had a bit of, some of the things that survived may be related to their palatability to locusts. So stuff that might have tasted really good when their seedlings disappeared, stuff that maybe tasted like something else, survived. But that's what 26 tonne of sorghum looks like. And these little plants in the front, that's what maize looks like. Didn't really appreciate the stressful conditions. This is at Tungamar in the northeast. So once again, we got basically the grass types were far more successful than anything else. And you can see a few of the weed issues, not necessarily poisonous weed issues, but just cooperatives don't like to see these sort of things get away in their trials. And Annika mentioned the Taurus. We actually put Taurus in these sites as well. Didn't get terrific establishment, particularly the best place they were established were at Coolanong, sandier soils, but we still got pretty low numbers. But they did impress me that despite the heat and the dry periods, they actually sat there quite nicely. Not for phenomenal growth, but I was expecting them to bolt the seed through stress, but they actually performed, they did what they were meant to do. They sat there and just grew a couple of leaves. This is the cereals. Most of it's stubble, but you can see the occasional little plant pops up. So what you get when you sow cereals in summer is you get one stem with a couple of little tiny leaves and a little tiny head. So there's not a lot of grain or really dry matter there. So effectively a waste of time. So, and this is a shot into 11-12 of, once again, Coolanong, sandy soil, in the mallee. This is our sort of forage legumes of various sorts. I think I've got a proper photo. So this is back at Kerrang. This is Lab. So this was taken in February. We got about 4 inches of rain at the end of February, and we ended up getting about 3 tonnes a hectare of dry matter off that. But you can see interspersed with all the little Lab plants. Familiar with Lab? It's like a climbing bean type thing. So it grows this sort of trailing type thing. But interspersed through the trial plots is a fair bit of heliotrope. These are the wheat plots, so yeah, not too successful again. And on the right is mung beans. So they grew, but yeah, you wouldn't call it a commercial crop. This is another one of interest, was cowpeas. Now there's agronomist at Echuca who's very keen on doing some work with cowpeas. But once again, you've got interspersed with a fair bit of heliotrope as well. One minute. Oh, all right, favours. This started as a bit of an accident. We had a favour bean crop stripped in February. We got 2012. We got 4 inches of rainfall at the end of February. We got a brilliant crop of favours. So going along this graze and grain type thing. Wonder if we let these grow, throw some sheep in the form of a mower over them, and see what sort of dry matter we get. And we got pretty handy 3.5 tonne of dry matter in 10 weeks' time. So it was pretty happy with that. But regrowth was, and going on this grain and graze thing, what happens after that? But regrowth was pretty poor, and they just succumbed to disease. So faba beans and faba bean stubble had every faba bean disease under the sun as soon as it got cold. While it was still warm, they looked fantastic. Cold, no good. So we repeated the trial in 2013 with proper sowing rates, and also a bit of a look to see, well, can we grow these things, not so much the grazing option, but also through to green manure for a summer crop. So dry matters were a bit less than what we originally were hoping for. We only got 1.5 tonnes, but you know, this is the end of May. Things are still quite warm, soil's quite warm. We've got irrigation with this one, so things can grow quite quickly. So in the next little period, we actually got quite a good lot of growth, so I'm pretty sure that we would have got close to that 3.5 tonne again. But we ended up with about 10 tonne of dry matter when we went to green manure. And so when we've turfed this stuff into the ground, we initially had roughly that 40 kilos of N per hectare. When we've done our nitrate levels, we're on the 2nd of October, which is just before sowing for some of the summer crops. We've had 117, but I was expecting a bit more. We've got 125 in mid-November. 10 tonne of dry matter should have produced about 200, by the rule of thumb. But yeah, so we're a bit, I'm not sure what's happening there. And I haven't got it in the notes, but this is just a special for today, that we've also had peas in there. They only grew half the dry matter, and they've been a bit slower in getting the air out as well. So there's still some questions. Are favours palatable? Where's our nitrogen going? Is it because we've got everything waterlogged because we've been irrigating to keep the moisture up? Or am I being too impatient that the nitrogen will come eventually when I do some more N tests? And so these are just some photos. That's the recovery in mid-June. Now our tech officer claims that he doesn't get enough recognition, so I thought I'd better include some photos. So these favours look pretty impressive, but when he stands up, they're not quite that good.